Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching us. Well, we're going to talk about the economy in Pennsylvania with two important business leaders in the state, and then following that, a couple of important reporters will bring us up to date on the politics and the government in Pennsylvania. Back after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, well, we're going to talk about the economy and in specific, particularly as it deals with Pennsylvania government. But first, I want to ask our two guests. David Taylor, he's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, and Luke Bernstein, he's the president and CEO of Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. All right, David, I'm going to start with you. In general, how would you describe the economy of the state at the moment? Good, bad, ugly, healthy, not healthy?
Well, I mean, we're continuing to make slow forward progress. I mean, the structural challenges still continue with the workforce crisis and inflationary pressures and high energy costs. But, you know, we're putting one foot in front of the other. Actually, tax collections from corporate taxpayers in Pennsylvania has continued to be pretty strong this year. So that's a positive sign.
Yeah. Pick it up.
Yeah, I think Dave hit all the points of what the headwinds are when you talk about inflation, energy prices,
unemployment.
The biggest challenge, I think, continues to be workforce. So previously, last year, the U.S. Chamber did a study, and it showed that in Pennsylvania, 74 skilled workers for every 100 available jobs. So we had a gap of 26. Just this past month, they came out with an updated study where it's actually 66 skilled workers now for every 100 available jobs.
You're shaking your head.
Well, that's not a good trend.
No, it really is. It's a very grave problem, and but it also creates an opportunity that we in the manufacturing sector that we have, you know, thousands and thousands of family-sustaining jobs available for people who can acquire the skills to take them up, and so that means that it needs to be a priority for state government to improve workforce.
And we also have a complex workforce, correct?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Pennsylvania is, so we generally don't hit the highs, we don't hit the lows, because our economy is the most diverse economy in America. So we don't have any dominant sector. We have a strong manufacturing side, we have a different strong technology innovation side that's growing, higher education, healthcare, all those different pieces, energy, it's very strong across the board when you look at terms of diversity of the economy. So in that regard, you're not seeing some of the areas that other states rely solely upon. We rely on a number of different industries. But when you look at our manufacturing, when you look at our energy, that's where we have great opportunity to grow. So that's where we have continued to be really strong. Without those sectors, Pennsylvania would be in a very challenging state right now. Okay,
we're going to head to another subject. At the end of this month, the current state budget season is over, and in July we start a new budget, and that's very, very important, not just for state government itself, but for all of us who live in the state.
Yeah, so the most important thing at this point in time is fiscal discipline, that there's a lot of money in the bank, the rainy day fund is full, there are non-recurring dollars from Washington that are still in the bank, and that there's a very strong impulse on the part of, you know, of Governor Shapiro and House Democrats to spend that money. The challenge is Pennsylvania has a structural budget deficit, which means that mandatory spending increases every year faster than the natural growth of the economy. That's driven by demographics because we have a large and growing population of senior citizens, people who are beyond their working years, and people then who also, you know, usually require taxpayer-funded services. We don't have enough people in their working years. That's why we have to create more economic opportunities to attract more young workers so that we expand the tax base.
Go ahead, pick it up.
Yeah, we have to look at some fundamental change in terms of our tax structure. Pennsylvania has had one trend for the last 10 censuses, and that is that we have lost a congressional seat and the influence that has gone with it in Washington. Every census, we've either stayed neutral on population or we've reduced population in comparison with other states around the country. So we've lost a seat. We need to look at why we continue to do that and change the trend. The trend has been Pennsylvania has been economically uncompetitive when it comes to tax reform. So this is an opportunity to level set and become more competitive on the tax side of things, and we can do that. If we don't do that, we will continue to look at tax reform as a cost instead of an investment, and that's the mindset, in my opinion, that has to change.
Yeah, I mean, the key is the percentage change in gross state product year over year. Pennsylvania has been below the national average year after year, decade after decade. That is why we continue to fall behind and become less important in the larger national conversation.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about competitiveness. How competitive are we in terms of a mix of economic aspects? We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, two leaders of the business community are guests on the program right now. Dave Taylor, he's the president of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers, and Luke Bernstein, he's the president of the PA Chamber of Business and Industry. And we're talking about a variety of aspects of the Pennsylvania economy. All right, let's start, Dave Taylor, with how competitive are we in this?
Well, I mean, we're not as competitive as we should be. And I think that's a longstanding mindset in Harrisburg, that so long as we're not quite so bad as New York and New Jersey, that makes it okay. And that's not good enough anymore. We need to benchmark Pennsylvania against the high-performing states and expect more from state government.
Good
and
point.
that we need to approach this with a sense of urgency, because there really is an opportunity cost for the longer we wait to fix our structural problems.
Luke, pick up.
Yeah, so I recently talked to a CEO of a company in Pennsylvania, and he said they have three operations in America. One is in California, one is in Tennessee, one is in Pennsylvania. He said in California, workplace is great, regulations are horrible.
Yeah,
in
good
Tennessee, regulations are great, workforce is terrible.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania, regulations are workforce is So we're the middle ground here. We don't want to be just we want to be superior. We have the opportunity to do that. So one area where we can compete is on net operating losses. People want to start a business in Pennsylvania, but when you look at our net operating loss structure and the treatment of it, it is a startup penalty.
What's that mean?
On new businesses.
NOL. It's the ability to apply your recent business losses to your current and near future tax liability. Pennsylvania is way out of line with IRS and tax law in 48 states, and that we cap the ability to carry those losses forward to 40%, where the national standard is 80%. When you have a startup company, and initially you lose money, you have to put money up front, and no investor is going to put their money in one of the only places in America where you can't apply the fullness of those losses.
So if you were going to hire someone and they came in with their resume and they said, I graduated, 49, I was tied for 50th, the lowest rank in my class, would you hire them? Probably not. So if we're Pennsylvania and companies are looking to start a business and we are ranked last, us and New Hampshire, would you come here? This is a thing that we can fix and we can change, because if you start a company here, you expect them to lose money the first couple years. So once they finally get in, they can finally turn a profit. You actually don't get to credit those losses until they make money.
We were an old industrial state. Coal, iron, and steel dominated the economy of Pennsylvania. And so shifting away from that to the aspects of the modern economy has been a tough ride.
Well, actually, the change that we're talking about here is also, I mean, it's important for startups, but it's also very important for cyclical companies that don't make a tidy profit in 12-month chunks. So our companies like industrial metals, industrial chemicals, they need this too to be competitive.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is something that is a way for us to become more in line with other states. It doesn't make us more competitive than other states. It just gets us in line. But when you look at our proximity to population, we look at our health care, our higher ed facilities in Pennsylvania, our energy supply, our natural resources, all those things can make us a dominant economic force, not only nationally, but worldwide. We just need the tools to get there. This is a significant tool that can help us get there.
He's exactly right. And alongside this important pro-growth tax change, we also need to fix permitting and have regulatory reform, because those things will work together to attract investment that will help the economy, help bring jobs and prosperity.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to thank you. This has been a really important economic update, and you folks will have to come back and make sure we can talk about some other things like regulation reform. All right, after a break, we're going to talk with two of the state's top reporters about important state political and governmental issues after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
All right, we're going to start with recreational marijuana in the third segment of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and joining me to do that is Marc Levy. He's a reporter with the Associated Press, and Angela Couloumbis. She's a reporter with Spotlight PA. Actually, I should say journalist, right? You feel better when you don't care either one.
We'll take either, yeah.
You'll take either one. All right, Angela.
Cold worse.
Recreational marijuana, medicinal marijuana is legal in Pennsylvania. Recreational marijuana, is it coming to the state of Pennsylvania?
I think eventually it will. I just don't think it's going to happen in the next 10 days. The issue has been wrapped up in the annual talks for a state budget. The state budget is due at the end of this month.
Right.
But though there have been discussions about it, there hasn't really been any measure that has come out of the House where there is far more support for it at this point in time. It's controlled by Democrats. And so it seems unlikely to be able to be wrapped up with a red bow. Yeah. But there is a lot of support for legalizing it in polls, and there is, it will bring in money. And so, that is something that both the legislature and Governor Shapiro need and want.
Yeah. How big an issue is this? Is there a lot of energy over the debate over the legalization, or is it a front burner factor?
Look, it's become front burner because the governor had it front and center in his budget proposal. Right. It went from being something that legislative Democrats were talking about to part of the governor's budget. The problem is that it's on the House Democrats to pass something, and they haven't passed anything. There's a ton of lobbying on it. There's a ton of business interests.
Tell the folks out there which party controls the House and which party controls the Senate.
The House is controlled by Democrats, who ostensibly are the driving force behind legalizing marijuana for adult use in Pennsylvania. Republicans control the Senate, and the majority of the caucus is against it, which means that they don't have to bring it to the floor, and they typically don't bring up votes if most of their members are against it. And so Democrats, if they can pass something through the House, they're going to have to somehow buy Republican votes. to get this across the finish line. And as Angela said, this is wrapped up with the annual budget negotiations, but it's impossible
And typically,
to see.
that would mean giving the Republicans something that they want so the Democrats can get something they want, in this case,
Yes.
recreational marijuana.
And that's why when it's part of the budget talks, it becomes, you know, a bit of a horse trading type situation. We'll give you this if you give us this. It's not. It doesn't seem to be far enough along in terms of an actual proposal to be at the point where it could be a point.
Is there interest among the folks out there high on this issue? It seemed a little more, how do I put this, edgy a few years ago and in the news than it is now, or am I wrong about that?
It's become a bit more normalized as more and more states have legalized it. Ohio legalized it by referendum, which was a right-leaning state, but you can see that it does have popular appeal even in Republican states. And so every other state on Pennsylvania's borders, except for West Virginia, have legalized it. Those are all blue states, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, New York. And one of the arguments is that all the business is going to go to those states, whereas Pennsylvania could legalize it here and at least reap some of the revenue. But it is a big business opportunity. So underlying the idea that people want to be able to smoke it legally and sort of shed the shackles of the criminal past around marijuana, it's big business. There are businesses in other states that are making a lot of money, growing it, selling it, distributing it, processing it, and so those businesses want to make money in a heavily populated state like Pennsylvania.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, something I never thought we'd be talking about on this show, and that's called skill games. We'll get into skill games and more soon.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania American Water. We keep life flowing across the Keystone State.
Well, I'll tell you, we're going to talk about something I don't know anything about, and it's called skill games, right? Angela Couloumbis, what's a skill game?
Well, I haven't actually played one, but I've seen them, and most people have. They're in convenience stores. They're everywhere. Restaurants, delis. Yeah. They look like slot machines, but the difference skill games makers say is that you actually need some level of skill. You need to employ some level of skill in order to win. And so as a result, they are different than slot machines, which are already regulated under the gambling law, the landmark gambling law that passed 20 years ago.
So there has to be regulation, is that what you're saying?
So right now they are not regulated, and that has been a big point of contention, particularly for casinos that pay a hefty tax on their earnings.
So the casinos want a tax on skill games.
Well, it's complicated, Terry.
It always is.
I think that they would like, if they were being completely honest, they would like to see the number of skill games reduced. They are in competition with slot machines that are currently housed in casinos. Nobody really has a good understanding of how many skill games exist in Pennsylvania. At one point, the state police had put it at 40,000.
And they can be almost anywhere. Is that the point?
Yeah, they can be almost anywhere. And, you know, it's an opportunity for the state to make some money, again, off of regulating. And so now I think there's a lot of discussion about, you know, Republicans who control the Senate really want a regulation. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth over the rate of the tax.
Okay, you want to add anything? Is that?
No, just that you know, another party that's unhappy with them is the state lottery. The state government is challenging these things, saying that they're unregulated gambling machines and need to be either
because they want the money to go into the lottery, right?
Well, yeah, right. They're saying they've had estimates about how much revenue the lottery is losing because people are playing these skill games instead. So that's one big challenger to the skill games industry. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stay with you. Let's talk about abortion.
Right. So in the U.S. Senate race, top of the ticket race, it's becoming a bigger issue. And it's being championed by Bob Casey, the Democrat who began his career calling himself a pro-life Democrat. He has almost come completely full circle on it, particularly in the last 2 years since the Dobbs decision, in which the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the right to an abortion, the federally protected right to an abortion. And he had a choice to make. He made the choice.
Tell the folks, Casey's opponent
is Dave McCormick, a Republican who is against abortion. And so the unusual position that Bob Casey is in now is attacking Dave McCormick's.
Because Casey is considered pro-life, is that correct?
He doesn't consider himself pro-life anymore. He said that when the Dobbs decision came down, he had a choice to make, either to ban abortion.
That's correct.
Or to at least try to allow it in some instances. And he sided with Democrats on it against a complete and total ban. And so he's in the position of attacking an opponent over abortion rights, whereas he's basically spent the last 20 years being attacked for being pro-life in all of his campaigns.
Sure. Is anything going to happen with this? Is it good?
Well, it's a big issue nationally. Obviously, it's going to play out in states as we hurdle really into the 2024 election, presidential election. So I think you're going to see it being an issue in that race. But I also think at the state level, you're going to see Governor Shapiro come out and reinforce that abortion is legal in Pennsylvania, that he is going to work to protect that right.
And that's an important issue for the governor, isn't it?
It's an important issue, but it's also a political winner. So even in red states, in the last 2 years, since states suddenly had a decision of whether to allow it or ban it, you have seen even Republican states, voters have stood up for the right to an abortion to keep it legal. And so Democrats will make it a major issue in this fall's race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, between Bob Casey and Dave McCormick, in every Senate race.
All right. Now, typically, the legislature will do the budget and then take the summer off. They'll go into recess. Is there any other important issue that might come up?
Education funding is going to be front and center in budget talks. How much money, given the court decision on providing a fair and equitable education for all Pennsylvania children, that is an issue that has to be resolved.
Yeah. Anything you can think of?
So, look, I mean, inflation is putting a lot of pressure on the budget. It's putting a lot of pressure on nursing homes, on direct care workers. A lot of the agencies that employ people are having trouble keeping them, and they're asking the state for more money so they can raise salaries to fill unfilled positions, to caring for the elderly, caring for the vulnerable. So that's putting a lot of pressure on the state budget.
Yeah. But just as an observer now, it didn't seem to me that there were a ton of huge issues that dominated what went on in the legislature. Is that fiction?
Right now, a lot of the pressure is off because they have $14 billion in the bank. They've never had a reserve like this. And so there's the debate is how to use it, not over what's going to be cut.
All right, thank you. See you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.